When people go missing, the majority of the time they turn up or are found well. However, there are cases of missing people who seem to have vanished without a trace. Despite the best efforts of search teams and loved ones, their disappearances remain unsolved and unexplained. So today, here at Unexplained Mysteries, we'll be taking a look at 3 mysterious disappearances. The mysterious disappearance of John Devine in the Olympic National Park. John Devine was a 73-year-old hiker who went missing on September 7, 1997, from the Olympic National Park in Washington. He was an experienced hiker and climber who headed into the park the day before going camping. He planned to ascend Mount Baldy in the Olympic National Forest, nearly a 6,796-foot-high mountain, via the Maynard Burn Trail. This trail is very rugged and challenging to traverse, so an accident likely occurred and Devine was somehow injured. It was only supposed to be a day hike, so when he did not show up the following day, his entire family grew worried and called the authorities. He was subsequently declared missing and has never been found. Devine lived in Sequim, Washington, and although he was legally blind in one eye, he was in peak physical shape. He was an avid hiker and had gone on many solo adventures in the Olympics before his trip. His friend last saw him on September 7th, the Saturday of his hike. He had been hiking in the afternoon along the Grey World Ridge, which is on the northern side of the national park. He had been camping with a friend just outside the park's limits in the Buckhorn Wilderness area. Devine had no gear or food with him other than a few snacks like granola bars. Although authorities conducted a search and rescue immediately, it was cut short due to a fatal helicopter crash. Shortly after taking off the mountain, a Bell 205A1 rescue helicopter crashed at the 5,000-foot level of Mount Baldy, about 20 miles south of Port Angeles. The crash ended up taking the lives of 3 people: Kevin Johnston, 35, the pilot, and a seasoned flight instructor, Rita McMahon, 52, a volunteer who trained search dogs, and Taryn Hoover, 31, a seasonal park employee. Another 5 people were also injured in the crash. The helicopter crash was caused by the deteriorating weather conditions as it started to get cold and snowy once the search began. The mountainside was too rugged and dense for volunteers to search through properly, so investigators quickly brought the teams back in before it got too dark and dangerous for them to be out on the mountain. The sergeant from the sheriff's office, who was in charge of coordinating the search team, explained to reporters and volunteers that if Devine had indeed been hiking in that area, then they would have already discovered him by now. If he had been unfortunately injured during a fall, it was improbable that he would have survived until that point in time. The search for John Devine was called off on September 13th, less than a week after it began, much to the disappointment of his family. The leading theory is that he was ill-prepared for his hike and suffered a severe injury that caused him to lose his life. No matter the level of experience, hikers should always take nature seriously and prepare themselves for any situation. When coupled with the cold weather, it would have been difficult for Devine to survive an accident. Unfortunately, we will never know, as he was never found in the forest, and his disappearance remains a mystery to this very day. The unexplained disappearance of Larry Jeffrey. On May 28, 1966, a young 6-year-old boy named Larry Jeffrey vanished from the Humboldt-Toyabe National Forest in Nevada. He was wandering with his brothers near the peak of Mount Charleston, just a quick drive from Las Vegas at a 12,000-foot elevation. He happened to wander off from his family and was never found. Investigators say that there were no predators or cars around to take him, so he essentially just walked off, never to be seen again. After his family reported him missing to the authorities, they organized a full search and rescue with nearly 1,000 volunteers. Even the National Guard assembled to assist in the search for the boy. They spent 16 days looking for him, managing to catch his trail a few times, but ultimately came up empty-handed. They discovered that he had eaten insects and berries along his walk, but could never actually find him. Searchers were surprised that they even found signs of his existence and foraging, since he was wearing light clothing when he went missing. They had believed he would not survive through the cold night wearing such little protection from the elements, but he managed to last for a few days before his trail went cold. Larry was partially deaf too, which could have played some role in his disappearance. Perhaps he wandered off from his two stepbrothers and could not hear them calling for him in the woods. He was never found, despite hundreds of volunteers searching up and down the mountain for weeks. The unsolved disappearance of Bessie and Glenn Hyde. On November 18, 1928, Bessie and Glenn Hyde set out for their extended honeymoon, where they planned to float down the rapids of the Colorado and Green Rivers for a few weeks. They said goodbye to Ellsworth and Emery Kolb, two brothers that were also spending time in the area. The couple departed on their boat to begin their exciting adventure, but they were never seen again. It has been nearly 100 years since the Hydes embarked on their honeymoon and mysteriously vanished. Colorado River guides still tell ghost stories about the couple's disappearance when sitting around campfires, because no one knows what happened to them. Although they were on an adventure honeymoon, it didn't take long for their family to notice that something was wrong, and then soon contacted the authorities. Glenn's father launched a search on December 6th. They were not even considered overdue at their final destination in Needles, California, but his father somehow knew that something was wrong. On December 19th, their flat-bottomed boat was abandoned and discovered floating in the river by a search plane. It was discovered about 3 weeks after their initial disappearance and was located around river mile marker 226. The boat was in perfect working order, with no signs of destruction or overturning. There were also no clues signaling what could have happened to the couple. Interestingly enough, the Hyde's gear and supplies were still found aboard the boat, securely strapped in and undisturbed. Authorities even found a camera on board with their last picture taken around River Mile 165 around November 27th. Search teams and investigators had trouble with this case because there were no signs of disturbance, technical difficulties, violence, or tracks leading away from the river. It was as if the couple simply vanished into thin air. Bessie did make a note in her journal, though, that they cleared River Mile 231, leading many to believe that they had at least made it past Mile 226, Diamond Creek, where they set up camp for a night. Additionally, Glenn was an experienced boatsman, having spent years operating and handling river rafts before their trip. He was considered an expert boat builder and managed their raft entirely on his own. He spent much of his life aboard rafts on the Snake and Salmon Rivers in Idaho. Although he was not a professional captain or entirely familiar with the surrounding area, he was not an amateur at risk of making simple yet fatal mistakes. The leading theory for their disappearance was that their journal was self-sabotage because the couple felt massive amounts of pressure from their friends and family. They intended to set a record for the speed and duration of their boat trip through the Grand Canyon. Plus, Bessie would become the first woman to boat the entire way through successfully. This pressure to do well and succeed could have caused them to either make mistakes or purposefully fail themselves. However, authorities found no evidence on the boat or surrounding areas to support and prove this theory. One historian believes that they were most likely swept overboard when their boat hit one of the many submerged rocks in the rapids that lie near Mile 232. The granite rocks often capsize and damage ships, causing many accidents every year. The Hyde's boat, however, shows no sign of distress or damage from stones. In 1971, an older woman was sitting with a group of rafters in the Grand Canyon and announced she was the long-lost Bessie Hyde, having escaped the canyon after taking the life of her abusive husband, Glenn. After authorities contacted her, though, she recanted the statement and denied ever having said it. Famed river rafter Georgie Clark was speculated to be Bessie after she passed away in 1992, and authorities found some documents like Bessie and Glenn's marriage certificate in her possession. There were even skeletal remains discovered in 1976 that people assumed were Glenn's. However, it was proven by the University of Arizona to be a different man. There have been strange stories and theories surrounding the couple ever since they first vanished in the late 1920s. Their story has inspired many writers and artists, spawning novels, a musical, and even an episode on unsolved mysteries. To this day, no one knows what happened to the Hydes, and we most likely never will. But what do you make of these disappearances and the stories behind them? Be sure to let us know your thoughts in the comment section below and help us by growing this community while working to solve these unexplained mysteries. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more videos.